Hey everybody, how's it going? Well, we are here at the Kern County Museum, Pioneer Village, and they're having a little event today. Wild West Day, supposed to be bank robberies and shootouts or something like that. But we're going to check that out and walk around, check out a little bit of the museum, and got the first exhibit there. That is the Beale Clock Tower that used to stand at the intersection of 17th and Chester downtown. It was destroyed in the 1952 earthquake and was rebuilt here at the museum. It's 13 feet shorter than it was originally, but it's still a really nice looking Moorish type architecture. And that is at the gate of the museum. It sits out front on the street. All right, well, also this building here, where you can go inside and check out. This was originally the Chamber of Commerce building for Bakersfield, and when they moved that downtown, I'm not exactly sure when that happened, but they turned this over to the Kern County Museum, and so we'll go in there and check that out too. There's some pretty cool stuff in there. All right, let's see what happens. When they started the oil industry in Kern County, that started with asphalt. And there was a place out near McKittrick called Asphalto, and that's why the McKittrick branch was built. I'll link in the description below the piece I did on the McKittrick branch. And they would actually mine the asphalt. They didn't drill for the oil. That came later. But they would actually dig shafts, and men would work down in those shafts all day digging out the asphalt, and they would then haul it up to the surface, and that's why the original branch line was built out there by Southern Pacific, was to serve that asphalt industry. And then later the oil. There's a Kern County timeline, and I'm not going to read all this off, but I'll walk by it slowly. You can pause and check it out yourself. I won't make you suffer through that. As you saw in the Taft video of the West Kern Oil Museum, these fossils were taken from the tar pits at McKittrick, and they used to have the entire saber-toothed tiger skeleton here. That is no longer here. Kind of looks like the one they have at Taft now, so maybe they gave them that one. Let's head out on into Pioneer Village proper. All right, well, we have come inside Pioneer Village here. Here's where we came in, the main building outside. This is new since this wasn't here. It's been a few years since I've been here. This research building wasn't here last time I was here. I can't wait to make use of it. But we have a lot of the old buildings that are from around Bakersfield, around Kern County actually, here. And this is the Lopez Hill House. This is the Howell House. They're actually giving tours of this every couple of hours. I don't know if we'll catch one of those or not. But the Lopez Hill House here, it says was Jose and Mary Lopez belonged to the first generation of Americans born in California after statehood was granted in September 9th, 1850. And they have a lot of little houses like this around here, some good-sized houses, and we'll check those out. Go along. And in case we don't catch the tour of the Howell House, this used to be open. You could go in and see it, but I guess it's been closed to the public for a while. Again, as I said, it's been a long time since I've been here, but this was built by the Howell family, and this house once set at the corner of 17th and H, which is right in the middle of downtown Bakersfield right now. This is an example of the adobe houses. These were very common around here in the early days of the settlement of Bakersfield, the lower part of the Kern County, because there was a lot of mud here, because Bakersfield was essentially a swamp. And so the material was handy. The Barnes log cabin. After being injured while fighting for the Confederacy during the Civil War, Thomas Barnes came to Kern County and built this log cabin for his family. This was originally, I guess, out by where Buena Vista Lake is. All right, this is a sheep herder's cabin according to the accompanying text. It was on the Quinn Ranch, which was west of Delano out in the foothills. And these sheep herder cabins were pretty common. The sheep industry was big here. It still is. It still has a presence in Kern County, but it was really big in the 19th century and early 20th century. And these sheep herders cabins were generally either built on skids where they could be pulled around, or they would be loaded on wagons and moved from one place to the next as the sheep were done grazing in a specific area. This is another one that's new since the last time either of us were here. The Bakersfield Sound. Well, let's go in and see what's in here. Leroy Van Dyke song, Just Walk On By, playing. Some fiddles from some of the local musicians, Jelly Sanders, Bob Morris, Dave Stoker. Cousin Herb's display. Oscar Whittington, I actually knew Oscar, he's passed away now, but Bill Woods, I didn't know Bill personally, but I knew him from around. Red Simpson. If you're a country fan and you haven't heard of Red Simpson, you're not really a country fan.
She was tiny.
Barbara Mandrell, I believe she was from Palmdale or Lancaster originally, but definitely part of the Bakersfield Sound. Buck, one of Buck's suits. Buddy Allen was one of Buck Owens' sons. Chet's Club. I'm not sure where Chet's Club was. Oop, I'm sure it'll tell. Oh, right here. Chet's Club became the Lucky Spot. That was on Edison Highway. I have a photograph of my granny and granddad and my great aunt and great uncle at the Lucky Spot back in the 50s. It closed down a long time ago, and the building actually burnt to the ground about 10 years ago, and now there is a Lucky Spot Automotive right next to that where that was.
1954, 55, 56. So we put all that count together.
Trout's was one of the local bars here, real popular bar over in Oildale, and when it closed down, the Trout sign, which that is a photograph of, disappeared. The guy that owned Trout's, or as it turned out didn't own Trout's, Vamoose, they think he took it. And a guy named Rockwell, a sketchy guy, and that was why. Maddox brothers and sister Rose. Merle Haggard, Sonny England, Bonnie Owens. One of Merle's outfits. Fuzzy Owen.
The guy that did the slide.
Yeah, he's another one I knew peripherally. I didn't know him, say we were buddies or anything. But these guys were all considerably older than me, but I got to know them later on. And they were still playing around town. Joe and Rose Maphis. Didn't know either one of them. Pretty cool little exhibit. Celebrating the Bakersfield sound of country music. And this is a recreation of the original Kern Valley Bank. This was on the corner of 18th and Chester, downtown. It was rebuilt into a beautiful structure, brick and wood structure in 1889. It opened on July 6th, 1889, and on July 7th, the Great Bakersfield Fire occurred and burned that building completely up. I'll put a picture in here of what that looked like the day after the fire. But yeah, this is what it looked like originally. Today, that was a bank until about 20 years ago. It became a law firm, and today it is Chain, Kahn, and Clark. All right, well, this is Jason, and he is the owner of Korean Barbecue, Sushi Private Parties, and Catering. And there is his email. And I am not a big fan of Korean food, but my wife and my daughter are, and they said this is some of the best they've ever had. And so I wanted to give them a shout out. They used to have the restaurant Ninja over by where we live. I went there a couple of times. But anyway, I just wanted to give them a shout. They're here today, and always like giving the local businesses a little shout out on the channel. If I get the opportunity, help them out a little bit. All right. Well, good luck, Jason, and hope everything works out for you.
All right, thank you.
They're doing the tour of the Howell House right now. Jennifer went in. I went in originally at the beginning, but there were a lot of people. It's really small inside there, the room, so it's really crowded. I decided to come out and shoot this while Jennifer's in there. And right here we have recreation of one of the land offices. Doesn't say which one, but Kern Land Company was one of the original land companies in this area. This is a general store that was moved down here from Woody, which is about, I don't know, 30 miles northeast of Bakersfield, up in the hills. It was also a gold mining town. That's what got it started. Now it's all ranching and some private residences, but mostly ranching up there. They have glass so you can look inside there, but you can't get in there, so forgive any reflections. Today, when you go to a store, no matter what kind of store it is, grocery store, hardware store, whatever, you go in there and get what you want and pay for it and leave. But in the early days, in the general stores like this, you came in with a list and you gave the proprietor your list, and they went and got all that stuff for you. And bins like that one right there, that round bin, that they still have those in stores, Home Depots and Lowe's, stuff like that today. And they look a little different. They're usually on a shelf now, but they have the bins where you can get nuts and bolts and nails and whatnot. So they had those back then. Nice potbelly stove there. I'm assuming that's a coffee grinder. It may have been for flour. It may have been something like that, where they would grind some flour in there. It was also a pharmacy. Then here, this isn't part of this store. This would have been more a railroad post office type thing with all these cubby holes. Ain't gonna help. Get back a little. But they have the names of all the stations along the line, and that's why I'm thinking this is a railroad thing. You can see there's Bealville, Connor, which is out on the Button Willow branch, Formosa. Millix was also on I said Connor is not on the Button Willow, it's on the Sunset. Millix on the Sunset, McKittrick, Rio Bravo, those were on the Button Willow, originally the McKittrick branch. And as I said a while ago, I will put a link to that video I did of the McKittrick branch in here. Monarch, that was on the Sunset, Gosford. So a lot of these, Sivert, that is now known as Sandcut, where the Sandcut crossover is today. These are all railroad stations. So still pretty neat that they put that here. Cobbler shop, cobblers made shoes. Back in the 19th century, you couldn't generally just go in and buy a pair of shoes. You could order them out of catalogs, but generally they didn't have shoe stores like they have today. And you went in and they set you down, measured your feet, got everything fitted to you, then they made you a pair of shoes. Okay, this says this was the Women's Club of Bakersfield, the Metcalf House. And this was on the southwest corner of Dracaena and C Street, which is in the downtown area, kind of the southeast part of downtown. Harness shop. You can see all the harnesses in there. Somebody had to make those back in the day, and places like this is where they were made. You saw the video that I did of the West Kern Oil Museum. We talked about the old style pumping units with the bull wheels on them. Well, this one here actually works. Come out here, push a button, and start it yourself. And this one is obviously operated with an electric motor. Originally, it had been operated by steam, and then later on, the big single-cylinder gasoline engines would have run these. This piece here, which they didn't have on the ones at Taft, is the counterweight. And that counters the weight of the rods and the pump in the well. All right, come in. Got Rebecca, our docent. She and I have been talking a little bit about this and about the local history. Some of the old photographs from around the area. When we leave here, we're going to be checking out the rig next door that's like that one. Some of the tools, a lot of this stuff in the Taft one, so I won't dwell on much of it. Smaller tent house. You can actually see a little bit better in this one. Oop, too close to the screen, but there wasn't much to a tent house, but there didn't need to be much to one. They have a theater here that has a movie that runs consecutively that you can tells you about the history and how some of this stuff worked. It's pretty cool. And this is a really cool, very educational room. Tells you how they look at the geology, land to find places where oil is likely to be, how they do cores, different types of rotary bits. They would generally turn considerably faster than that in a working well. And some bits, as you can see, are very large. See how that is compared to my foot. Big bit, very heavy. When I did the deal on the drilling rig, I was talking about the Kelly and how they changed pipe and did all that stuff on drilling rigs. And there's a whole little movie you can watch about that. Downhole pumps, I talked about those in Taft. See if I can get this. This shows you how the pumps work, getting the fluid out of the well, getting the oil out. Pretty cool. Beautiful model of a cable tool rig. And here's a model of a modern day drilling rig. Some blowout prevention equipment. Christmas trees. Pipeline laying. They used to use flumes before they had flow lines to move oil from a well to a storage facility. Back then, generally open reservoirs, open top reservoirs like that one there. But they eventually started lining the reservoirs and then building tanks. These are interactive displays here. You can pick up the receiver there, the phone receiver thing there, and it'll tell you all about the refining process. I went over that the basics of that in the piece I did on how oil gets from the ground to your car. That is in my other stuff and history playlists. I'll link those in the description below. All right, we're out at the earlier type cable tool rig. Oh, we're inside the power plant house of the rig here. This would have been one of the steam operated motors here. See the piping going outside to the boiler. Fed through this pipe down into this cylinder here. Got everything going with this big old belt. And up to the band wheel here. I went all over all of this and how it all works in the piece I did on the standard derrick cable tool rig at Taft, so I'm not going to dwell much on this. It's exactly the same. This one works exactly the same way, and I will link that video in the description below. It's a recent video, so be able to check it out. It says that this is a 1910 era rig. The Hotel Fellows, as I mentioned earlier in the other building, Fellows was a small community. It was north of Taft. There's virtually nothing there anymore. There's a fire department there still, a few little businesses, but this was moved from Fellows to here in the 1960s, I think.
Can we go in it?
Little side view of the Fellows, Hotel Fellows. All right, here are a bunch of signs from Bakersfield's past. I think the entrance sign, I believe that was at the Padre, Hotel Padre. I could be mistaken about that. Far East Cafe was a Chinese food place down on 18th Street. It was right next to Thorpe's Harley Davidson. Doors, local candy and confectioner business, been around forever. Jolly Cone, that was on the corner of Wyville Road and Bell Terrace, or Oak Street, I guess, and Bell Terrace. And I don't know if the business survived the freeway interchange. I don't think it did, but that is the sign from it. Jim Baker Electrifier, that was an electrical shop over on Baker Street in East Bakersfield. Stewart Electric, I can't remember where that was. Was it on Norris Road? No, that was one of the other electrics. But Stinson Stationers, that was on Baker Street. They're still in business, but I think they might just be online now. But my dear cousin and friend, Brenda Bingham, I believe she still works there. I don't think she's retired yet. But she's worked there forever. Sandstone, Bakersfield Sandstone and Brick was one of the largest predated Home Depot and Lowe's and stores like that. And they sold everything. They had their own batch plant. They had their own trucks and everything. And you could go, and it was a huge store. They had a railroad spur with 2 tracks that went in there to serve it. The Frog, that's from the Green Frog Market. The Green Frog was on the corner of Bernard and Alta Vista. C.N. Johnston Body Works, that was down on, I think that might have been on 18th too, maybe 17th. It was downtown. Vincent's, I don't know. I think that's from Vincent's Cyclery. There was also a Vincent's Market, but Vincent's Cyclery, Vincent Claroux owned that for decades and decades, and it was a locksmith and everything. And there was also a grocery store called Vincent's over on Golden State and F, where we used to shop when we were kids, but I believe that is actually from the Cyclery. The Silver Fox, that was up on Mount Vernon and 178. and was part of the, there was a bowling alley and everything up there. I believe the Silver Fox was attached to that. Hoyet's, Hovitz, I don't know where that was. Amistoy's was over in East Bakersfield, I believe on River Boulevard. I never went there, but I drove by it a million times. Tops, I'm not sure where Tops was either. Sabas was a men's clothing store in East Bakersfield on Baker Street. Sherry's Liquors, that was up on North Chester in Oildale. Shafter Drugs. Shafter is a town about 15 miles northwest of Bakersfield. That missile right there, a guy named Milton Miller built the Padre Hotel in the, I think it was in, I can't remember now, around 1935, I think. And shortly after, the city they wouldn't allow people to stay on it because it didn't have enough fire exits or some such thing like that. And Miller thought that the city was just hosing him because they didn't like him. They butted heads on other things, and he had that, and I think there were a couple of these, and where it said Hotel Padre, where it says that today, that was a big sign that said Alamo Tombstone. And that was his way of getting back at the city and making them look like the meanies that they probably were being. Today the Padre is open, and it's a 5-star hotel with a nice nightclub and lounge down there, restaurant. O.B. Newsom was another East Bakersfield business, a tire service. Floyd's, there were 2 Floyd's locations of the block-long emporiums. There was one on North Chester and one on South Chester, and they took up an entire block, and they were hardware stores. They sold tents. I used to love going in there. Floyd's is still in business on North Chester, but it's just a smaller store now. Andre's Giant Burgers. Andre's there was one on Niles and one on Brundage Lane. And the one on Brundage, as far as I know, is still open. I don't know about the one on Niles. It's not a part of town I find myself in very often. But it was said that they had the best pastrami's in town. I don't know. I've had some other pastrami's that were just as good as theirs, though. But anyway, and this gas station here was the Sonora service station. And it's set on 18th and Sonora Street over in East Bakersfield. In the piece I did at Taft, I talked about, showed the bull wheel laying horizontally on a support structure on the ground that ran multiple pumping units. They have that building closed, but that jack wheel is in there with its engine, and you can see that how that would have worked. Ran out here and operated that pumping unit, and they were capable, as I said, it depended on how the wheel was set up, but that one could have operated up to 5 wells. This one's just hooked up to 2, and this one is broken. There is the original Kern County Courthouse. That was in Havilah, the courthouse and the jail. Havilah was the county seat of Kern County from 1867 till I think it was actually 1873. It says 74, but you know me, I've been wrong before. That used to stand at Bakersfield High by Griffith Field, that water tank. Now take a look inside the jail. There were quite a few people in here a minute ago. Yeah, put a few criminals in these kind of jails for a little while, and stop complaining about the jails we have now. Look inside the courthouse.
Look, I got spittoons.
You notice the spittoons by all the chairs. Some of the older courthouses in Bakersfield. You can go to my slideshows that I done through the first one was from 1873 till 1920, I believe, then 1920 till 1966. Those are in the history playlist. Assay office, another building from Havilah.
I don't know why there's nothing in Havilah. It's because it's all here.
And the fraternal hall. Let's go take a look inside this place. Elks. I guess this is just a representation of the different fraternal halls. Knights of Columbus. That one doesn't say anything. It's dark. Can't see anything in there. Some of the Dust Bowl housing units, it says. A lot of people came to Kern County during the Dust Bowl because there was work here.
More than 500,000, it says.
Yeah, more than 500,000 people came to this area during the Dust Bowl in the 30s. And like I said, there was a lot of work here. We had a lot of agriculture, the oil fields. There was a lot of work here. So it was a pretty popular destination then. All right, here is a ranch cook wagon. This differed from a trail chuck wagon in that respect. It was a lot bigger for one thing, but it wasn't on the covered wagon platform. And this would have just been moved around sparingly. It wouldn't have been something that they moved along a trail like a regular chuck wagon. This was actually on what was called the Lakeview Ranch, which was owned by the Kern Land Company. And this is where the cowboys on the ranch and all the hands that were working in that area, away from any headquarters or whatever, or bunkhouses, this is where they would have got their meals. All right, this blacksmith shop. See the little horseshoeing sign there. Those of you who follow me and know a little bit about me know my dad was a horseshoer when I was a kid, and he practiced ornamental blacksmithing until he was about 70, and finally just decided it was too much work, but he still has all of his stuff. So blacksmithing holds a place in my heart. This particular blacksmith shop was on the Callaway Ranch in the Rosedale Colony, which was established by the Kern Land Company out west of Bakersfield. This is new since I was here last, as is the Dust Bowl housing. And this is a southern ditch plow. I have never seen one this big in person, but they use these to dig canals, water ditches, move water around. They used them for a lot of excavation work, but primarily around here, irrigation. Little undertaker there. This is an undertaking parlor. Always reminds me of the Munsters when I hear it referred to as a parlor, because that's what Herman always called it. St. John's Episcopal Mission. This was out in Rosedale in the 19th century. Was moved here, and as with where all the signs were, you can rent that out for various functions. You can do that for this building as well. This is a recreation of the original Kern County Hospital. This was down by where Bakersfield High is, 13th and G. And then it was moved to down where 18th Street dead ends into Oak, where the freeway is now, the old Tenneco building. I don't know what those are called now. Then it was moved to East Bakersfield, became Kern General Hospital, and is now Kern Medical Center. Here's the old Norris School, 1882. Jennifer said this must be the life flight taking somebody over to the old county hospital. It is a life flight, chopper. But the Norris School is kind of over by where I live. The Fruitvale Norris School sits in that place now, or in that basic area. Singleton's carpenter shop. Singleton was the guy who built most of the Howell House and then became a rich gold miner, part of the group that started the Yellow Aster mine in Randsburg. All right, this is the wheelhouse, and the Wheels were a prominent Bakersfield family. Jennifer was talking about how you used to be able to go in the Howell House, but I was mistaken. I'd never been in there before. This is the one I was thinking of, where you could come in and look into each room. Look at how small those beds were. Well, there's a pretty good size one there.
A lot of water damage.
Huh?
It says water damage. It's got a leaky roof.
This was one of the Chinese Joss houses in Bakersfield. It doesn't say where this was. One of the things that is mistakenly thought of when, especially in Bakersfield, the last Wild West shootout in Bakersfield happened at one of the Joss houses in downtown Bakersfield. When you read the accounts of it, the historical accounts, it just says it happened at the Joss house. But there were actually a few Joss houses. These were temples where Chinese went to worship. They're like their little churches. And so a Joss house, say that 5 times real fast, was just a Chinese temple where they went to worship and celebrate. This was one of the Miller and Lux survey houses. Miller and Lux were a couple of businessmen who were one of the first people to stake out just many, many, many square miles of land, mostly on the west side of Bakersfield and to the north. And the deal back then was that as long as you could access it by boat, you could claim the land if you wanted to drain it and get it ready to cultivate or live on. And so they built these light flat bottom boats and went out on what was called Buena Vista Lake or Kern Lake at the time. And you could actually go almost all the way to Stockton at one time without on that side of the valley without having to get out of a boat. And so they staked all that land out, and then they drained it and became one of the big land companies here in town. Another drugstore here. This one was in downtown on 18th Street. It was operated by Francis M. Carlock. You can see all the bottles of potion up there that an early druggist or pharmacist would have used to concoct his remedies. All right, this is the Wells Fargo Express office. As some of you have seen in my railroad videos, express mail. The railroads had their own express mails. Railway Express Agency was one. But express mail or packages that were sent by rail or stagecoach. And those companies were the predecessors of places like FedEx and United Parcel Service. But might interest some of you to know that one of the original express mail companies was American Express. That is how they got their start. Kern Island Station, Kern Island, is what Bakersfield was referred to before it was referred to as Bakersfield, before it was actually settled and drained and developed by Thomas Baker and his company. It was called Kern Island because this place was a swamp. All right, this is the Weller House, and it's not that interesting a structure, but the Weller family operated a business, a general store, and had a little gas station with a couple of gravity-fed gas pumps next to it. And they operated that store from around 1910 to into the 30s, I believe. And they had purchased it from the people who originally built it. I don't recall that name. It isn't in the accompanying text. I've gotten one of my history books. But that building is still out in Rosedale and is still being used and is the oldest continuously operated business building in Bakersfield. Photographer's office, little smokehouse there. Probably a lot simpler and a lot less expensive than a Traeger. This is a barn. It doesn't say where it was. It just says the city donated the barn to the museum. And then that is a corn crib next to it where they would store corn. And that corn would have been for animal feed. The same as they do today. They would have ground it up, mixed it with water. They call it silage. There's a old pump house. It says it's the Fairhaven pump house. Fairhaven was the community just west of where the Highway 99 is today. When I was a kid, that was still called Fairhaven. And then there was, going west was Fruitvale, then Green Acres, Rosedale, Greeley, and Rio Bravo. Now it's all just called Rosedale, thanks to the developers, and it really annoys me. But this was the pump house. This is where Fairhaven got its water, with its water supply was from the pump house for that community. Wooden Santa Fe caboose. This was opened up and you could go in it until it's been, I don't know, like I said, it's been about 10 years since I was here, and it was locked up then too. Let's go up and take a look at it. And looking through it, the seats up in the cupola. And this is one of the older style. Still got its old caboose stove in there with cooktops. You've seen those in my video of the Tehachapi Depot Museum, but it's got the old horizontally operated handbrake on it. I don't know when they stopped using those, but this is one of the older ones. Well, being made of wood tells you that. All right, this was a crossing flagman's shack, and the accompanying story says this one was at Monolith, which is a cement plant east of Tehachapi. And crossing flagman originally was just that. He would, if there was a train coming, he would walk out with flags and stop the traffic as a train was approaching. Later on, they built the crossing gates like you see today, or some sort of a crossing warning system that was operated from inside this house by the flagman, and he would drop the gates or start up the wigwag or whatever as a train was approaching. And eventually they designed the crossings that you see today. They're a lot more trick, and I will link my video that I did on how crossings work. This thing's going to have more links in it than it is video. This 2914 is a 480 steam locomotive that was an oil burner. It was used on the Tehachapis as both a point locomotive and helper service, and it went out onto branch line service as the bigger, more powerful locomotives came into service, and it ended its career as a switcher in the yard in Bakersfield, and it was the last steam locomotive to operate on the San Joaquin division for Southern Pacific. It was retired in 1955. Southern Pacific, I understand, laid a spur track in here, pulled this in here, and I don't know if that's what they did with that caboose, or I don't know if that followed it in here or not, but pulled the track up behind it, and here it sits. This was the scale house, or one of the scale houses, at the Santa Fe yard in Bakersfield. And those were originally phone booths where you could talk to different locations. They were connected directly to the communication wires that ran on the communications poles on the opposite side of the track from the signals. They ran with the Western Union and such. When they got rid of those type of telephones and started installing cabins at control points, those became tool sheds. And for all you country and western fans, this is the house in which Merle Haggard grew up. It was, or is made, that back section along there is made of an old wooden boxcar, and they added this little front piece to it. This was over in Oildale. My buddy Kenny Hill worked for T&T Crane, and they were the ones who moved this over here. And according to what I was told, they didn't even get any props for it on the news. So T&T Crane, I know I'm not the news, but everybody on my channel now that watches this will know that you are the ones who moved this. Very Spartan. If you've never heard the song Hungry Eyes by Merle Haggard, you should listen to it. And it describes his life growing up essentially in abject poverty. All right, Merle Haggard's place. All right, this was the Bena Depot. Bena is about, depending on where you measure from the yard, whether you're in the middle of it or the end of it, about 15 miles east of Bakersfield. Today, what is known as Bena, where the control point is not where this was located. This was located about another mile further down the tracks. There was a lot of ranching going on out there at the time. Mining was still going on up at Caliente, up in the canyon, and it was still a transportation hub at Caliente, and they used Bena as a jump-off point, and you could buy tickets to ride trains in there, or you could do freight business there. It was also a train order and telegraph office. Step inside here, lots of waiting room benches. I don't know if they would have actually had this many benches out at Bena. I don't know that there were that many people waiting for the train out there. But this would have been where the agent worked, that did the train orders and telegraphs. You can see the hoops there. Shoe shine station. I also don't know that they would have had one of these at Bena, but I don't know. Santa Fe timetable where the station master would have wrote down the arrival and departure times of trains as they came and went. You'll see that one says Santa Fe. And after 1900, the joint agreement was signed between Southern Pacific and Santa Fe to make that joint facility from Bakersfield to Mojave, and that agreement is still in place between BNSF and Union Pacific. This would have actually been the agent's office here, where they took care of the business end, the express mail, which was packages rather than just mail parcels. Really cool old grading there. This building, according to the accompanying literature, was the Southern Pacific Jail at Caliente, and was one of the first buildings donated to the museum in the 1940s. I said Caliente was a busy place, had a lot of mining interests, and then when the railroad came, that just created a lot more people there, and they needed somewhere to keep the rowdies, and I guess SP decided this is where they would do that. All right, well, that will conclude my tour of Pioneer Village at Kern County Museum. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're from the area and you've never been here, you need to come check it out. If you haven't been here in a long time, you need to come and check it out. And if you're ever passing through here, this is a really cool museum, as you saw. So again, I hope you enjoyed that. If you would like to go over to my Patreon channel and consider becoming a patron, I would really appreciate that. And my PayPal link is in the description below, and the button is still in the banner if you're on a laptop or desktop. I could still use all the help I can get. So anyhow, again, I hope you enjoyed that. So remember to like, share, subscribe, click on the bell if you want to be notified of future content, and we'll see you all later.